Connecting within, it's magic. How many of us are welcoming the additions to our hearts when we align with those who understand the nature of what it feels like to be a part of soul vision? And when we say that, it means the honesty, the understanding, the connectivity we have, whether we are in our highest of highs or not. It can be a painful process for some who continue to align with those who are having or causing havoc in the minds of many. But for the most part, we are here to allow for ourselves to see perhaps what it's like to know that you're always surrounded by love and you're always cherished, adored, and honored, not only within, but in the world around us as soul. You see, that's where many go when they think about the nature of those who are opening up their hearts and their minds enough to allow the vision of love to shine through. And yet others are saying, this is the devil's work, right? Brenda's had to deal with that, and she says, we're just going to set that aside for a while. This is for those who actually want to be enlightened to the nature of who we are or who I am, how I did what I did, and how we can all participate in the enlightenment era of soul, correct? It's more about the nature of I've done enough of my soul's guidance to know when there's a character on the line who still doubts the nature of what I am. If I were to tell you that my own soul came to me through a process of love that I am now reproducing, but in a different format and from a higher level of understanding of who I am and how I do my work, you would understand that just because your book labels the process something doesn't mean others are not having a great experience with it. So for instance, this could be the nature of those who develop within the views of friendship, within those community standards. Okay, I have to be more aligned with the nature of who I am from a place of professionalism and enlightenment rather than the good time Charlena that others think we all have as part of our vision of who we are, right? This is where some people would come through and say to themselves, oh my gosh, that's such a derogatory remark. It's meant to be in jest. You see, I have that kind of allowance within my own soul's wisdom for who I am. Okay? Not in the nature of the reality, but the ideas that people will place stereotypes upon my heart without actually knowing who I am or who we are as a couple or as a group. So one of the latest visions that I put forth in a small highlight reel is about the nature of the couplings and soulmates. And that's why when we hear from our soulmates of our past, it can be a hard thing. Sometimes it depends on where we are in our minds. Those who are coming to us in the future are also on board in certain circles, right? In certain circumstances. And that's why we honor those who are saying, this is not my cup of tea because I don't want to know what that feels like, or I don't want to know what that is. Most of us are enlightening ourselves to the nature of who we are as visions of love of self first and foremost. But our own souls help connect us to those that we really truly do align with. And in doing that vision, we can often find that some souls are not meant to connect to everybody as a loving source of wisdom. Others are here showing their, quote, light worker vision that says that there are changes afoot that need to be had. Now, how they go about doing that can be very disruptive to a lot of people's minds, but it may be that it's what's needed for some of us. To see that certain circles I vibrate in are beautiful for me, and yet they are a struggle for others because I bring a certain dynamic that cannot be denied. And many are trying to come up with sources of wisdom to counteract the vision that I myself am about to place through, right? I have so much information about soul level understanding from a place of love and how we get here in our hearts. But it's not about telling people how to do that vision. It's more about reuniting with our own souls and what it can do, and what it can bring, what it can honor for ourselves, what it can dishonor for others, is where some go. Because that's where people will say, well, there's something wrong with this, that, and whatnot. And in essence, it depends on where you're vibrating in the moment. So when you are in the vision of I am of love always, whether my mind is telling me that or not, that's where she goes. My heart's connected to my soul and knows that in my heart, I know I cherish and adore the soul level understanding above anyone else's wisdom that is walked upon this plane. That's how strong my soul is. It's because I align with the all and the cherishing of the all. So I'm not there assuming that their souls are as they are on this plane. This is why people start to get it through their heads, the strength of soul. They start to understand the nature of the love of soul, because it means that we're all in it together, creating from various places of love, understanding, development, growth, wisdom. Sage advice for many is what some would say. You'd be surprised what kind of wisdom you can come through with when you align with your own soul. You would be surprised what kind of wisdom your own heart can come through with when you are on your own with people who align with you. That's why this is not about saying that it's about connecting with your soul. The wisdom within is where we were the other day. Connecting within is about doing the work to connect with other sources of wisdom as well as your own. And that means it can be very terrifying if you are in the thought process that I'm not in a great place for who I am, or that others are also in these not so great places. Or I vibrate and align with those who understand that I don't aim low, I always go high, right? I am not always the source of wisdom that she is vibrating with. But I can tell you right now, she's a happy-go-lucky kind of soul for the most part, carefree, and chews gum to distract her from the work of another, correct? No. This is about the nature of aligning and disaligning with certain people here who might be bringing us trouble. This is what Brenda understands about the nature of the connection within, because her soul is giving her not only the curriculum that she's going to be utilizing to help others open up to the experience of soul, and we are all extremely happy that everyone's saying, yes, great. I want to have something that helps me align more with who I am on a soul level from the highest places of wisdom. And that doesn't mean that we created along the way. There are other aspects of who we are that have been denied by many sources of wisdom. And so this is why many are a little concerned about what that means. We're more about creating the experiences here that allow us to understand that just because we think we're in alignment with somebody doesn't mean that we are, correct? How many of us say, I thought I knew somebody, and then they turned around and did X, Y, or Z, and now I'm no longer in alignment, versus we have an issue to discuss that needs to be highlighted. This is what my soul vision is about, because I align with the idea of the Supreme Court, and yet I went off in my mind on certain souls for what I felt was a disruptive process for my soul, but my soul was then able to go ahead and bring me the wisdom, or at least an attempt to, because I was very much in an inflamed ego state yesterday, up from those souls. And it was very respectful, but I wasn't able to receive it as much because I was too heartbroken about what certain aspects of myself were thinking. I had to pull my ego back out of who I was and say to myself, Brenda, this isn't who you really are. You know that there's more to be seen and heard from those souls who actually understand what's happening behind the scenes and why, and what this means for our future, for this country, and for the world. That's why when you connect within, it can be a magical experience, or it can be horrific if you are attempting to contact those souls that you claim are part of the process, which many have been told that in their books of old, the works of wisdom. They have their wisdom attached to it. They have their soul's visions attached to it. However, there are souls there that are denying the wisdom of it because they are not able to see the metaphoric contributions that many utilized in placing those words upon the pages. Okay, a lot of it is symbolic and metaphoric. Has nothing to do with the reality in which we were experiencing it on this plane. And that's what people need to start to understand. Now, Brenda is very much of let's connect from within, right? And that's the connection part. So it's not just about going in and having some thoughts or some intuitive hits. That's wisdom granted to you always. You have it on board with you, just as your soul is always connected with you. It's just not in the same way that many would want to acknowledge as possible, because it kind of disrupts their systems of development, perhaps. Brenda is more about let's expand upon the experiences of soul in ways that we can't even imagine. That's what my soul brings to me. The health and healing wisdom is part of that process. The business development is part of the process. The wisdom of my body as it was, is, and will be is part of the process. The idea that I can be led astray is one of those things that many are thinking can happen. And it has happened in my mind because my own soul was, it's like the diatribe of soul. I don't want this to be a diatribe about the beauty of soul without understanding that there are characters in my life who have felt the need to try to test my wisdom with theirs. And that is the nature of those souls who now understand why Brenda's soul will say, so-and-so is trying to get access to who you are from a soul level and see if you can handle their hearts if they are trying to tear you a new one on the soul level, right? We don't do that on the soul level. Do you see how it comes through on the soul level? I'm of love of all. Yes, thank you so much for telling me how you feel about who I am. But that's the nature of where some of those anger points, right? Those pain points or those hot button topics can come through to help people understand the nature of what it's like to be a soul who has connected to their own soul's wisdom and has access to the love of all. And in doing so, the wisdom words come through that help each soul discover more of who they are in their own ways. This is my goal of what's to come. Now, before I would bring through soul wisdom from souls who were on the screen, and people were very appreciative of the vision, but it's not always about the souls of those who are of familial understanding. I was often getting a lot of my family members as well, and it becomes more of a entertainment avenue for me to see how the family members say one thing, but on the soul level, there's something else going on. You see, that's the nature of understanding. And privacy is respected for the most part for my family and my friends. I very much am grateful for their soul's wisdom. I understand the nature of hiccups in who we are. That's the nature of what sometimes I experience on the screen, is a hiccup in the process. And I sit and I think and I go, why am I hearing what I'm hearing? You have to be discerning in your wisdom sometimes. Brenda's been told it's not the good time to be on the screen, right? It has nothing to do with now, but in the past, this is not the best time to be doing this work. Or as in this morning, this is, Twitter is not your friend this morning, Brenda. Okay? That's the nature of what love is, to get those loving words of wisdom brought to you. But you always have the free will, like I did, to disregard it and just say, oh, well, I'm just going to do a brief scan and limit my exposure to any of the political negativity that I was writing in yesterday and the day before yesterday. How about that for honesty? So you see, it's not about saying I'm always riding this high and I don't have any expressions as a person or as a it's like the wild one in the mind, right? That's what some aspects of myself have been denied because of certain experiences. When you go through that process of alignment with your own soul, it's a very intimate and well-revered process for the majority of the people on the soul level who have risen to soul level understanding. They know that this kind of work is very intimate in that you are feeling and experiencing and honing in on the love within and not necessarily assuming it's coming from someone outside of who you are. And that's when those intimate moments can feel more like an outside soul, but you realize very much that you honor the wisdom that it is you from various levels of love. And that's where we go. Now, those loving levels don't necessarily feel good for it. So this is why some people are being told those good books of old give people those higher vibrational feelings, but they've been layered with love of friendship as well. So Brenda is like, we process our love in various ways. We reinforce the beauty of who we are in our friends and family most often, correct? Not a lot. Many people are disconnected from their friends or their family, or they have those issues. And it doesn't mean that we all are supposed to be here, doing the same thing with each other 24/7 or always connecting on a personal level for the rest of our lives. We hold them in our hearts as love. But whether or not we want to continue to align with them directly is a different source of wisdom. That's when we're doing our dance of soul. It's the dance of soul. Brenda knows what that's like. It's about being free to create and have your beauty brought through for you. Okay? Now that also means that many men are being dismantled in the minds of many. And when we say men, we mean the men in control of the world, right? Those who claim that they have the power to enact change in such a big and great way that it could be disastrous for the women or the children or those who are not really identified with that kind of vibration. That's why Brenda knows who she's working with, right? Her own soul is giving her the vision of Trump and his allyship with her heart. This is why men can't hack her heart. Because she doesn't align with the vision as he is here on this plane, but she does understand from a soul level understanding. His soul is working out a lot of issues that he himself would acknowledge if he were indeed in the vision of honesty of who I am. He knows himself what he's working with, and he knows himself what his conditioning of soul was as a child and as an adult. He has no issues with it. He doesn't claim it. He just doesn't even acknowledge it for the most part. Yet those around him say he's very soulful in the fact that he does vibrate with the nature of I love who I am, and that's all there is to be seen. Right? No, he's showing his discomfort at what her heart says about that vision. She knows it is more limited than what most people will think. He is honored and adored by his own soul, but he has his issues he's working on just like we all do. We would say we're beautiful in every moment for our souls. But if you don't understand the nature of combining with a soul who loves who you are and says, my soul matters, right? Someone is saying, my soul matters more than you. This is what Brenda was dealing with. And she said, let me go ahead and unwind that vision for you. Who are you, and why do you think you are better than anybody else that has walked this plane? See, this is the nature of superiority that others are planting in their minds, thinking that somehow they're going to project it out and that it's going to be accepted by everybody. Brenda basically has to go toe-to-toe with those souls who think they're going to make her bow down to their, quote, pleasure principle. This is why people would assume that in her mind, she says, ooh, we're going to sit there and have a little, there's a phrase they want to bring through it. It's not really understood. But his soul is beyond reason for most of us here. He's still not available for comment about what his death date is or what he's planning in his mind. It's already known, but it's not a predetermined formula for him as of yet. You see, she was talking to those souls who were saying there are so many souls who are more concerned about the political atmosphere of the moment versus the idea of let's create a better path forward for all of us as much as possible and see how many people align with it. So Brenda was aligned with the negativity of the moment, but she understands the nature of the love of soul that doesn't have any negative disregard for her or her family or her friends, because we are trying to unite everyone in the vision of separation no longer exists for her or her friends. So she knows what it is that's happening often before it happens. And it's not of invasion of privacy. It's more of we love each other enough to let each other know what we're working with. And then maybe we can allow for some variances in wisdom to come through that allow for sharks. Brenda's afraid of sharks in essence, right? She doesn't align with the nature of what a shark is in the ocean, but that's where she swims. She says it can be a hard place to try to make wisdom be accepted by souls that are disregarded as evil or less than. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle or what area of the globe they come from. It is about the nature of understanding our hearts and our souls and our wisdom are with us. And this is why Brenda says, for those of you who might have more difficult past or difficult understandings about who you are, don't worry that your soul is going to come through and somehow belittle you and think that there's something wrong with you. It's more like, what steps have you created for yourself to hurdle over, which is where some go. They go to a direct connection like I do. And others will say, well, I'm going to wait until I cross over, and then I will make the journey from that place of love, of understanding of the books of old. Okay. Because that's where we do indeed reunite with each other in a more direct way, unless you're able to do so here. Now, the intimacy moments is what some are more concerned about, because they're working with the nature of my energy is my own. I don't need to feel anyone else's energy. It is not someone else's energy, it's your own. Okay? It's your own heart, it's your own soul, unless you decide to go outside of the vision of, I love who I am enough that I can vibrate with those who are of honesty and reverence for the process of love of channeling. Okay, there's a reverence there for all of us who've done that work and know the channeling of the souls is about her soul's vision of love for everybody that doesn't include agreement with everybody's work here. It's impossible to say, I agree with everybody, because in essence, it would discredit my own work for trying to bring through those posterity moments that my family tree has. They were of their own moments of posterity in their own works of wisdom. Whether or not they created it in a written format or not, they created the nature of who they were in whatever ways they did, and that's their posterity. They made it through the process of soul discovery, as we all are. And so that's why Brenda's not saying that everyone is supposed to be doing what she is doing. It's just that many are starting on that process or have already arrived in that vision and are being discounted as less than, or of having some sort of issue of the mind, and not understanding that they're not aiming for the highest of who they are. And this is why it takes a a big girl doesn't cry kind of moment. That's the nature of Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. Brenda knows what it's like to have the tears of joy, the tears of friendship discontinued, and the tears of happiness, right? The tears of sadness. But we're going to focus on the nature of those who now understand that your own connection with your soul is so paramount to the idea of what many are experiencing. And yet they're not understanding that just because I create a difficult relationship for myself doesn't mean that the fallback to a difficult relationship that I had is a bad experience. It means it's a clearing up of the negativity of various energies that I'm working on, that I myself created, or the choices that I made, and what the dynamic was that I created. That's not the easiest process for many to go through. So that's why many of us will stick with the present moment and then go through and then align with creating wherever we are in the present moment, aiming high for a potential future in certain ideas, and then letting the chips fall where they may, see how our creative process works out, discover more of who we are, whether or not we're happy with the process or not, right? It's the process that we want to enjoy. We don't necessarily worry about the outcomes. And that's why we want people who are even in those books of old to understand that it's the joy of the journey that we want everyone to work with. And if your process in those visions is this isn't making me feel good or I'm not enjoying it, then you might want to readdress or reaffirm your faith from a different kind of understanding that allows for you to enjoy your process. Okay, because it's about enjoying the experience of who you are and the experience of your journey as much as possible. It's not about self-sacrifice anymore. We don't have that vision that we have to sacrifice ourselves for others based on the idea of soul vision. Some will do that vision very well, and they are highlighted and honored for that nature of sacrifice. Others will say, I was forced into it by my family in the idea that I have to sacrifice something for somebody else's wisdom. It is not there for most of us on this plane at this point to choose the nature of self-sacrifice for the sake of someone else's vision. Okay? We want people to honor their hearts, their souls, their wisdom, their love, and their guidance. Okay? You are all part of the puzzle that we call soul, right? It's like the puzzle pieces of soul coming together. It's the wisdom within. And that connection that we hold within is where we align with the wisdom. Others will say it's an outer vision of love, but for the most part, your inner discovery of who you are and your inner discovery of who we are as souls creating can be a fascinating and luxurious process if you can handle the wisdom of it. You can do it from a place of luxury or deceit. Some people are trying to assume that soul vision means they're all of the high. It is a variance in degrees of psychopathy is where others are being placed when they go through this process, rather than the understanding that they're connecting to higher levels of wisdom, often reaching those levels of love that others are not necessarily understanding. And that is what we want people to honor. When you're looking at those, quote, lost souls, we want you to really think about the nature of where they may be and why they might be experiencing that without people around them understanding it. I've had that vision handed to me, hand over foot, but it's not about trying to rescue everybody from who they are. Some people have to go through the process, and it can take a long time to honor those works of wisdom that help guide us to a better understanding of that process versus those that are just being labeled as bad or evil or whatnot. Okay. So I want to say thank you again for watching. And remember, as my soul has guided me to do, stay curious, wise, and soulful. Have a wonderful day.